Don't touch me while I'm tantric.
Oh, it's like tantric or something.
Oftentimes people will make the comment, and it's usually in sarcasm, and I totally understand. But they'll say something along the lines of, all right, cool, you understand and recognize this as a whole.
There is no spoon?
You might recognize yourself as awareness, and that's eternal, but how does that change your life? How does that affect you? The egotistical feelings that you have from just deeply identifying with the body separate from the whole, causing the feeling of lack and fear and worry.
Separated from its body.
Your soul separates from your body.
Separate! Separate!
How does that rid you of these? And that's a fair question, because to be honest, just having that outward recognition,
two entirely separate entities sharing one body,
just becoming a point of awareness, a seeing instead of a looking, some of my other videos talk about. And you have this outward recognition of it just being one thing. And then if you go inward, and I don't mean in the body, but just into awareness, and just recognize that you are awareness.
I am aware! I am aware!
And everything within reality arises from awareness, like how in a dream, everything in a dream is just arising from within awareness. It is awareness. You can have that recognition, and just those two things alone isn't total enlightenment. That's why they say once you have enlightenment in that sense, the recognitions, that it's never over, that it just keeps unfolding. Because that alone is not going to rid you of this deep identification that you've had with the body your entire life. You assume two places are where your awareness is located, and it's here and here. And up here, it's usually with the thinker and perception, with seeing, right? The seer and the thinker's up here. So you'll take awareness and identify it with there. And this is going to be another good point. And the other place you identify with awareness with yourself is in your chest area, your heart, right? Your feelings. You feel like your feelings come from here. And then if somebody's coming at you, you'll say, oh, you're talking to me? Like you'll even point here. So you have these two places that you feel as if awareness is located. And there's other tantric tricks, some of my other videos talked about, but I'll go ahead and explain it again, that you can do to recognize that that's just not true, right? So I can hold my hand up and do this. And as identifying with awareness, it doesn't feel as if I'm moving, right? My hand's moving, but I don't feel like awareness is moving. If I were to turn my head back and forth like this, and I'm not present with myself and just aware of it, I assume that I'm moving. But awareness itself, the whole, like how in a dream it would be the entire thing, isn't ever moving. And you can recognize if you're present, just be a seeing, look outward. This is going to sound weird. Look outward, just be present, and then turn your head. And notice how you, your self-awareness, is not moving. You've just deeply identified with your head in this area for so long that when you do this, you don't have that feeling. But when you do this, you have that feeling. Right?
Oh my God.
You feel as if your awareness is just moving, but it's not. So having the outward recognition and the inward recognition itself, that's the first and main gift, yeah. That's the recognition of what you are. But you have to keep going into the present, this being, sitting with this recognition, and just sitting as awareness, as seeing, and work on those feelings. For example, here's the tantric trick I was talking about. So say you have a negative feeling arise in your chest, right? And you can think about it. You can think your way out of this, but you don't necessarily have a kind of liberational feeling from it, right? You can think, oh, well, I am the whole and I know that. You can kind of sit in the recognition and you have this intellectual liberation from it, right? But then you can just look away and it come back. But how do you work on this? How do you work on those feelings that feel as if they're rising right here that are just so deep and negative? Instead of thinking about it and trying to just, I'm one. I recognize this as one, so that's not me.
Say it already.
Jesus, just say it already.
In those feelings, sit there in your awareness and just take them. Just imagine yourself taking them and painting them all over reality outward. Not that anything's outward, but just take this feeling and imagine that you're taking it and smearing it outward. It's going to sound funny, but just if you really are aware of yourself and you tried what I said earlier about turning your hand and your head, it sounds funny, but that localization of the emotion, this tension, seems to spread out. And it's not that it's necessarily spreading out, it's just dissipating. There's no longer a tension, because that's what that is. It's a tension. Like some of the videos when we're talking about people going on a theme ride or to a theme park, and they're getting shot way up to the top of the ride, and this sense of fear, sense of self, and then when the ride crashes and they realize they're going to be okay, there's this deep right. That's really what they're going for. But that deep tension that's building up, that's just a tension that's building up, that's what you're releasing. And since you identify with the body as you're going up that ride, it feels like, oh, like that you're creating this feeling pretty much from an illusion. So in that same way, since it's pretty much an absence of your being in a way, it's not wholeness. Not to say that you're not really feeling it. It's just more so an absence of a feeling. You can smear it out in that way away from you, because it's not really you in the first place. You're not really located right here. So anything that could be outward making you feel that way isn't directed towards you. It's not personal. It's impersonal. Which is to make another point that it's not that you're not the body, that this isn't real and I'm just awareness and it's not feeling anything. It's not that at all. You are the body, but you are also the whole. And from this localization, you are still going to experience the pain or whatever negative problems might come your way. But there's a difference between experienced pain and experienced suffering, because suffering is from the mind. If you're deeply identifying with the body, your pain and your problems are going to become suffering. But if you set with yourself, and when you feel those feelings, really recognize and set with yourself as awareness and do the work to just expand yourself out, to just really let go of that. That's what that is. When you're imagining yourself just smearing it outward, it's not just this funny thing I'm trying to tell you to do in your head. You're literally taking this tension, like if you had a tension in your leg and you were to push your leg out and just try to relax the muscles in your leg, that's kind of what you're doing. But since this has more to do with energy, I guess you could say feeling, more of a mental thing, more of a mental, we'll just say that for this example. You have to do something mental with it. Since you're tense mentally and you have to relax mentally. So really that smearing of the emotion outward away from you is just a relaxation of that tension. So you can think about it intellectually and have this kind of intellectual freedom from it.
Buddha punch. I need some Buddha.
Just an understanding. But those feelings will still remain, right? So that comes. The question comes. You can have this understanding, this recognition, but how does that help you? It's still just as important, because you have to have that recognition, recognize what you are to relax back into yourself, right? But that's not the end of it. You really have to do work after this. You have to recognize throughout the day, if you're already not present, when you're becoming super angry or depressed, to just become present. Hey, I'm not just the body, I'm the whole. I'm awareness. And that's not necessarily what is having this happen to itself right now. Because when you deeply identify with this story that's happening to the identification of the body, that's when suffering occurs. It's just like how in a dream, if you're having a dream that you're Neo and you're not yet aware that it's a dream, you can be terrified and be suffering, right? 1,000 problems can come at you and they can feel like 1,000,000. But if in that dream you've recognized, oh, I am the whole.
There is no spoon?
There is no spoon.
There's just a sudden relief, right? That's what that is. Of course, when you have this recognition outward and inward, the relief is sudden, and then after you look away from it, and you're not in the present, you're not with the recognition, here it comes again, but that's the work. That's what you have to do. You have to go back to that place. And constantly be more so aware of yourself. because now it's going to feel almost more ignorant, right? Because you are aware of the recognition outward. I don't want to say outward, but I have to say this just to kind of explain the situation. You can have this somewhat inward recognition, not in the body, but just as in I'm awareness, and everything that is in reality is arising within awareness. But you have to go into that. That's not it. You have to keep going into that. You have to... Sometimes I'll do a live stream, and I do it a lot as a live stream so nobody thinks I'm faking, and that I'm just making several videos. But I do a live stream where I'm just sitting here being, and I'm asking you to just be present with me. And that's because if you do that, you're going to feel that deep sense of lack I'm talking about. And if you can just keep facing that off and on, and make yourself sit there, get over it, until you finally have to get up and go do something again. Each time you go to that place, that feeling of lack is just going to be less. Each time you go there, it's going to have faded like a sigh just a little bit more. So the question is fair. It's just an ignorance of the rest of the process. And I guess that's some of our faults, because a lot of us talk about this all the time. It almost sounds regurgitated, but we don't ever really tell you about how you're supposed to be working on yourself. Which, to be fair, I try to do the live stream and get you to sit with me, but... so... that's just Tantric Trick number 1, too, by the way. I'm going to make several of these videos of just different ways you can work on yourself in that way. So you can intellectually have an understanding and a kind of a liberation from it. But then there's going into yourself as awareness, sitting with these emotions and then just literally working on them to release that tension.